All right, gentlemen, everything we discussed will be timestamped in the description below, and all of his secondary weapons we will talk about at the end of the video, and I will tell you what situations I like to take them in. So when it comes to the Bulwark after patch 5.0 right here, we are still looking at the fencing parry build being his strongest build. So when it comes to the Bulwark's gear perks, you're never really switching off his gear perks. These three are way too strong, so I would really never change those any build that I have. And then when we're looking at our parry build right here, we are going for Intimidating Aura, Shock and Awe, and Defensive Advantage. These three paired together are very strong. Every time you get a perfect parry, it is going to feel very impactful. And, you know, when you're in a fencing weapon, you're going to get a lot. So right here, you're running the Fencing PowerSword with this build, which I think is the preferred build overall for the class right here. But his other options are still very strong in this build, and we will go over how I spec those out. So when I am playing with the PowerSword, as you're seeing right here, that's how I like to set it up against Tyrannid enemies. And then the bottom one is how I like to set it against Chaos enemies. So with the PowerSword against Tyrannids, I'm using my power stance a lot more, and I'm getting into my speed stance when the opportunity arrives for me to get into majors. And then it's kind of opposite with Chaos. I'm using my speed stance a little more and a little less on my power stance, just because there are a ton more minors on the Tyrannid side of it. And using your power stance is just very, very useful. So that is kind of the different play styles that you're going to want to use when you're going against Tyrannids or Chaos. And then the spec tree right here is just going to complement you for either enemy that you're going up against. Okay, and we will move on to the PowerFist after this. So this is the same type of build, but you are just looking at how you're going to want to spec out your PowerFist instead against Tyrannid and Chaos enemies. Now, when it comes to the PowerFist, when it comes to the fencing version, I like the speed version of it. It's just so fast. So I'm always using the light combo attacks, mostly when I use these Power Fist, and then mixing in my parries in between. That's just how I like to run them, and I basically run them the same way against Tyrannid and Chaos enemies. You know, I do mix in my charge hits, you know, my charge shots and things like that, but you know, mostly I am using just the light attack with these weapons right here. And like I said, still very, very strong with this build, and I would actually say this is probably his second best build right here, would be the Chainsword after the PowerSword, and then probably put the PowerFist last. But the fencing Chainsword, so strong, guys. You guys already know. The main thing I'm looking for the Tyrannids is just getting that extra ground stomp, and also getting into the full throttle so I can get to my ground stomp a little faster. And then I'm popping up for my Chaos ones up there to grab the increased ground stomp, the 10% Chaos, and the extra 10% to major enemies. So, you know, most people know how to already run this sword. You're running it, you know, in a similar fashion. It's just a little bit easier because you have a shield at your disposal and all types of things like that. And then you're reaping all of the benefits from parrying with it. So very, very strong option as well. Anybody that's looking to, you know, kind of switch it up from the PowerSword, the Chainsword is definitely a great option in the fencing version. Alright, if you guys are wanting to switch over to the balanced version of the weapons, you know, some of them will give you a slightly increased damage boost. The PowerSword, I'm not so sure yet. It's really close, guys, for the PowerSword. I would say the PowerFist does give you a slight advantage in the balanced version of them. So basically, you're going to refer to the fencing version of the weapon for the specs, but you're in the same build and everything. So the only thing that's going to change for you is you're not going to hit perfect parries quite as well, and you should receive, you know, a minor increase in damage, at least with the Power Fist. I would not recommend the balanced weapons for the Chainsword, and the balanced weapon on the PowerSword is very similar damage-wise to the fencing version, but personally, I still prefer the fencing version of the PowerSword. For our first block build, I do prefer the block Chainsword. I will have a PowerSword one as well, but I do prefer the Chainsword. It just feels so much harder hitting, and it feels more worth it when you're losing the ability to not have perfect parries and things like that. So when I go block build, I usually take the Chainsword. This is how I set it up against Tyrannid and Chaos. Basically, even against Tyrannids, I'm not going for the increased ground stomp. Instead, I am going for the extra damage against the extremist and the extra damage against majors, because with the blocking weapons, they struggle a lot against extremist enemies, and that is really where you want to be able to take them down quickly. And then also with your class perk, you have to switch off Intimidating Aura, because that does not work with the blocking weapons, and then you're going to want to go up to Conviction instead. So when your armor is fully depleted, you take 25% less health damage for 5 seconds, And then if you don't like that one, you could always go down and take forward momentum after shield bash melee damage increases by 25% for 5 seconds. Just no matter what, do not take intimidating aura because it's not going to help you out at all. And I did find some success with the blocking weapons when it came to the Bulwark, just because I had my shield and I could kind of load up my my stacks a little easier with this class. But I still do recommend his fencing weapons overall for the class. I think they just complement his perks a lot more, but for a different playstyle, and you still can do a lot of damage with this setup right here. I'm not saying that. You can run it through lethal, everything like that. So still a lot of fun. And then when we were talking about our blocking power sword, it's basically the same setup, just you're using your power stance a lot. And I would really not recommend the blocking power sword against chaos enemies. I know I got it set up right here for you, but against chaos enemies, if you're going blocking, definitely go with the Chainsword. This thing really struggles against the chaos enemies. I feel like it's just too weak against the majors. Even with the Tyranids, it's weak against the majors, but at least there's so many minors that you're creating a lot of gun strikes with your power stance and things like that. So if you want to try it out, you can, but I do think the Chainsword is better suited for the blocking weapons as it sits right now. Alright, and we are just going to get into just a couple unique builds. I have ran these through lethal, but they do fail in comparison to the other builds. This is your max defense build. You're going to pair this with a fencing weapon, and this is going to give you incredible amount of defense. So you're going to get 25% less health damage for 5 seconds every time you lose your armor, as well as you are going to get non-finisher gun strikes also restore an armor bar segment, and 20% less damage when you are surrounded by 5 or more enemies. So, and as well, if you want to switch your signature perk, you can go with Armored Advantage. So anytime you have armor, you cannot lose control or be knocked back. So right there, if you're looking for the max defense possible for this build or for this class, it is right here. And it does make you very, very strong and hard to kill. It's just your damage output takes a huge hit. So that's why, you know, this is a lethal build. You can go through lethal, but it is definitely not a top tier build by any means. And then another one the same manner, and I don't even know if this one might not even get you through lethal, but this is just a shield build. It's called, you know, shield support. This is makes your shield basically as strong as possible. You're going to go forward momentum. After a shield bash, you gain 25% extra melee damage. So you would just basically begin all your encounters with a shield bash and then have the 25% from the start, and you know, work it in after that as much as you can. As well as you're going to go with Armor of Contempt. They just fixed this recently. It does work a lot better than it did. And on the plus side, it doesn't damage your teammates anymore, so that's nice. But so when you block a range attack, all enemies within 10 meters radius take the damage instead. So that is also a nice one. And then this is a gear perk that we're always taking right here, but Shield Bash knocks enemies back and makes them lose control for a longer period of time. So that right there, those 3 perks, I think are going to make your shield as strong as possible. Like I said, I probably wouldn't even try this one on lethal, but I ran this run through like Ruthless back in the day, so this one still isn't too bad. And then for our secondary options right here, as you see for the Volkite, this is what I take against the Tyranids. And I follow the top row for my increased charge shot, and I am going for the ammo version of the gun. And then for the Chaos, I take the plasma pistol, and I set it up in this fashion for extra plasma ammo, as well as making my charge shots cost less ammo to, you know, they consume less ammo every time I use them. So very strong with the plasma Chaos. Sorry about that, guys. But the plasma Chaos, or the plasma versus Chaos, I feel it's a lot easier, dude. Trying to heat them up with the Volkite and they're moving around so much is very difficult. So I would definitely switch off, and the plasma is a strong gun as well. When it comes to the charged version, it just lacks ammo, obviously. So ammo version of both of these guns, and as you see, that is the enemies I like to run them against right there.